Women on Change family. Lexima Jeanose here, the founder of Women on Change and the lead in our program. I hope this space finds you well, this message too. So today's topic is going to be how do we help the kids by helping ourselves? Whether you're an auntie like me, or you're a mom, or you're a godmother, whatever, or your cousin, little sister, big sister, and the list goes on. There are so many kids who are struggling. Um, it's there's a big thing now for mental health, but I truly believe deep down these things stem from a number of things. Oftentimes, these kids are not seen by their parents, and it's not the parents' fault. It's not the community's fault. It's because these communities don't even see themselves, and these parents don't even see themselves. When I say community, I mean everyone in that community. Okay. Um, so when you are in an environment that you don't feel that you are enough, right? What do you expect to happen? You can't possibly feel that, right? Especially if you're a child. So for the teenagers, I understand sometimes when you feel the need to, whether it's escape the environment. People are saying, why do kids run away? But you have to understand sometimes running away, it's like refugees, right? Who are leaving their countries or leaving wherever. It's like refugees and layers. I mean, as a refugee who came to this country with my parents, came to the US with my parents. I can't say this country because it's relative. I'm in different places, right? um what you find is that now you have folks going from one place to another, right? We all refugees or immigrants somehow, but the labeling is something else. But that's a whole different topic. Okay, let's focus on the leading and how you focus on what you can control. And so when people are saying, this child has everything at home, why do they feel the need to run away? You may feel that they have everything, right? Because to you, having a home, having meals, that may be enough, right? But for that child, right, if they're not feeling peace within, it's impossible for everything else to fall into place. And I think sometimes we misunderstand that. We see whether it's, quote unquote, people with money or, and people are saying, oh, why are you leaving your country? US, for example, some people are saying, oh, I don't know why Americans are leaving America. These are people, whether you're from Haiti or somewhere else around the world or anywhere, right? The idea of what this country stands for in their mind, it's again, it's from their own view. It's perfect. It has everything. Why would you want to leave? It's sort of like that, right? And a parent's mind is that the children have everything that they believe is enough and they should be happy. But ideally, there's something, every child is unique, right? Ideally, there's something within that child that is not connected, or they don't feel seen enough. And I understand this because as a kid, I felt these things, right? I just happened to create a little bubble for myself that I could coexist, like that I can exist and to feel at peace. Like I literally had to live in a different world while I live in a huge, I was part of a huge family, right? So parents, youth, children, or especially the parents, how do you make sure that you see yourself so you can see your child, right? And if you're in a relationship or an environment that you don't feel those things, it's impossible to make your child feel that. As much love you think you're giving that child, but sometimes the behaviors, the things that you do, the things that you hide, right? Whether it's the pain that you're dealing with, the kids see that, right? They're in that environment. Sometimes the kids see better than the parents because the parents are so good at hiding things, and the kids they're so smart at seeing them. At least that was my world. And I still see that today with my siblings, right? They see things that their parents don't even see. And I think that's normal, right? I think there are things that people will see about myself that I won't see. We all have this um blind mirror, if I may put it that way. And sometimes people will be honest with you and they'll tell you. And sometimes people do it for the wrong reasons, right? They want to hurt you, they want to bully you. So there's that. This is why I always say examine what people bully you for and examine what people like um, congratulate you or whatever, make you feel good about. You also have to know, hey, how do I feel about that? Now, until you can see or feel whatever you see and feel good about it, it doesn't matter what everybody else sees. And it's the same thing for a child. So if you're a teenage girl or a teenage boy or a teenage, however you identify as, okay, what it comes down to is while everything in that environment is going on, how do you go about finding a space for you? And so if so for example, your mom, you know, your mom loves you or whatnot, but there are times that your mom, and I know so many parents who've done this, there are parents who will call their kids ugly. I mean, straight up, like you ugly, or I mean, so many parents, and they do it. They do it. They don't think that they're hurting the child, but they do it in such a joking way. But they don't realize the impact it has, right? And I've experienced this where I had to talk, like because I've been in that environment where I had to tell parents, this, you don't do that. But if you're a teenager listening to this, I want you to know that these parents themselves don't feel enough about themselves, okay? So they seeing you as a reflection of who they are, right? So if you're a parent, I mean, what kind of parent would call a child the B word, or you know, the U word, right? You ugly, or whatever it is? If you're a parent, your goal is to make sure that child feels so good that they don't want to seek anything else outside of themselves, or someone outside of that environment see that they need to take advantage of your child because um, you're not nurturing that child in a way they feel peace, right? So again, that was my world. I mean, my parents never called me ugly, but there were other words that were said without, whether it was to make me feel you know, there are ways that your parents sometimes compliment you, but it also hurts your other siblings, if that makes sense, right? Because they again, they see you as a product versus you as you the individual. So in my case, as a parentified child, my parents saw me as that go-to responsible, you know, the one that could help them balance their struggles or of being parents, right? So therefore there are things that I would have access to that my other siblings wouldn't, or there are things that I'm capable of doing. Those things will be leveraged, or words will be used to you know, sort of like supposed to motivate my other siblings, but instead it hurts, right? Whether it's, oh, your sister does this, why can't you do this, right? Or why can't you, you know, all these things, we don't realize how much it hurts someone else. But if you come from a big family like me, and regardless if you come from a big family, but when a parent speaks that way, it hurts the child, right? But as a child, you're not thinking that this parent is hurting themselves, right? They're just hurting you. But yet, this is the person who's making sure you have a roof over your head. This is the person who's making sure that, you know, you eat for the day. So I get it why some kids turn to the outside world, to gang, to you name it, right? And I'm not saying it's okay, but I understand it, because when you think of the struggles that these kids are dealing with in the environment that's supposed to love them, they rather get that love, even though it's not love, right? It's a different kind of love that they get out there on the streets, but at least they feel that they're in control, or at least they're being seen, even though it's harming them in some ways, right? So if you're a parent listening to this, I would say this: if you want to learn how to truly nurture your children, learn to understand the things that you don't feel enough about and why. Okay, whether it's the way you see yourself, don't see the children. And again, I think some people, many people actually have children because they feel like, hey, I want to give love, but in reality it's them feeling empty. Not everybody, it's them feeling empty. They trying to feel, or I don't want to say empty, like there's a disconnect with who they are, and they're trying to feel that, whether it's having children, getting married, or having that big house. Again, I get it, because society does a good job telling us that we are not enough, so therefore we have to fill that up with whatever. And children, particularly for folks who are who can, whether it's the material stuff that people want, or it's the ability to whatever that may be, they gravitate towards that. So women, we've been told, hey, we can't have kids by a certain age, so therefore we have to get married by a certain time and have children, otherwise we're not enough, right? So that's an example. Or it's a young man who, been told all along, for him to feel that he's a man enough, he needs to have kids and a wife, when he barely knows himself, right? Or the parent who feels like, hey, I have so many kids, if I don't marry my daughters before a certain age with this certain person who has certain economic power, then I won't be able to get the wealth that I need, right? I mean, it goes on and on. But if you, as a parent listening to this, it's okay to look within. It's okay to not feel enough. But what's not okay is for you not understanding why, right? Because you do have that opportunity to know why. And it stems from your upbringing, right? There are things that my parents, both of them, would say sometimes. And of course, in my mind, I'm like, okay, but it's not, as a child, I'm not thinking, okay, they should know better, right? You get angry, you don't want to be in that environment. But as I come to understand myself and understand my parents' roots, if I may put it that way, I got to understand where they come from. And I think we all can do that, right? If we choose to. Of course, it's always a choice. And for the teenagers who are looking at this or listening to this, I would say this: if you're in college, you feel like you have low self-esteem, or you're struggling with anywhere or any parts of you, whether you're going through depression, as something that I've talked about, that I've gone through, there's usually something within you that's trying to get attention, or that's trying to help you find you. It's painful sometimes when you're going through that pain, you don't understand it. But if you sit with it, when I say sit with it, so let's say you don't, diet is your thing, right? If you feel low self-esteem, and some people it's escaping that environment, some people it's eating. I mean, the body is going to find a way to fill that void, right? Or the brain, wherever your thing is. It could be the high, whether it's drugs, whatever drugs, right? It could be anything. Overworking, or whatever. Once you find that trigger, right? And if I may use this example, there's a young lady who volunteered with Women on Change, and her focus is health. And she talked about how she used to be so her diet, she was such an overweight, but she didn't understand. And she was, her diet was a huge thing, but she didn't understand the stress that she was under was part of that, right? In that environment. Once she understood that, then everything changed. And now she's majoring in something where she can help youth in toddlers or parents understand the power of nutrition so they can better equip themselves as parents, right? So those are things that you want to think about if you're a parent. And I know not all parents going to have access to this. Again, this is why I do the training, right? The training that is truly based on my own experience and what I've got to research. So I would say this: parents, do the best that you can to inspire your child, but you can't do that if you cannot do it for yourself. So for example, if your goal, let's say you have not 10 kids like my mother, but let's say you have 5, right? And you have to work 2 jobs. Let's say you're a single mom, for example. Find that one thing that makes you feel happy, especially if it's not drugs, hopefully not drugs, right? But something, it could be going for a walk like 30 minutes per day. Take that time for you. If you start feeling the beauty or the happiness that thing brings you, or maybe it's taking yourself out on to a nice restaurant once a month or whatever it is, find it and enjoy it as much as you can once a week or once a month, and then start seeing how that changes. And if you're a teenager who's struggling being in an environment where your parents or that environment is so not healthy for you, okay, it's making your life hard, find that one thing. It could be being in that, again, I have to share my own. As a kid growing up, I just knew the level of responsibilities I had to, and I didn't know I was doing this. I just had to examine it later. I literally find a space for myself where I was such as I was told, a quiet and a lone child. But I never understood. I was told that's who I was as a kid, but I don't think I was ever that. And I got to understand and I got to experience that. And I appreciate that part about me, because deep down, that's who I am. But I also have a lot of energy that I give out there too. So I had to learn how to balance that, and balance that was the hardest thing for me, and I'm still doing that. So if you're a teenager, one of the things, whether it's you're in college or high school, middle school, you're listening to this, I would say the first thing to be able to do is find a space that works for you, right? Whether it's in the home, and it's hard when you, especially when it's an environment where two parents don't get along, or there's so many other kids, or you have so many responsibilities. But find that moment. I don't care if it's 10 minutes, 5 minutes, that there's something that you enjoy. And I know for some who don't have a room by themselves, or they have to share it with so many other siblings like I did, it's hard. So if it's outside, I love being outside, and now I understand why. It was always something that was there. So find that space and figure out what works for you. All right. Yeah, I would say that's one of the things that I'm realizing. One of the hardest things for parents, to be able to give their whole self to themselves and be able to do that for their children, so they don't see their children as an extension of how they feel or how they see themselves, to let their kids be, but be a guide to the child, actually be a parent to their child. But they have to be able to feel that themselves, and not being able to feel that themselves it's hard because they never had it. So it's the generational thing that's being passed along without knowing. Again, as I said, sometimes the love that we think we're giving those we love is the most poisoning thing, because we think we're helping them, but we're handicapping them at the same time. So again, it's something that I've got to see and learn with my own siblings, my own family. I realized that that parentified child was in my siblings' way in so many ways, and I had to get out of that. All right. Anyhow, I hope this was helpful. Again, as a parent or a teenager, whatever you're experiencing, to be able to understand where it comes from or how to cope with it, you're gonna have to be willing to look at it and see yourself as part of it, and then see how you can change that dynamic. But the how you speak to your children, it definitely affects them, and then they turn around and do the same thing. All right, and again, we oftentimes we're a product of our environment if we are not aware to the extent that we are, and it just harms us. So until next time, I hope you make the best of today, and don't forget, subscribe. Thank you. Cheers.